almost, Natasha. What did you make of it all?
You win some, you lose some, James. I hope the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, when he unveils his manifesto, will give LBC a question later on this week. So fingers crossed for that. But anyway, final roll of the dice for Rishi Sunak today. This is one of the last moments that he's got to try and convince the country, try and pull the Tories out of this death spiral that they appear to have got themselves in. We've obviously got 24 days to go till everyone goes to the polls. And this Tory manifesto today, lots of it, of course, already what we did know, but there are some new bits today. And he's hoping that that will be enough to revive the Tory fortune and to pull them finally up in the polls. And the main offering today, his headline offer, is a new tax cut, the abolition of national insurance by the end of the next Parliament.
Setting up on your own means you don't have the same security that those on payroll do. So it must be worth taking that risk. We need to make it worth taking that risk. And that means that their taxes must be cut. So, in the next Parliament, we will scrap entirely the main rate of self-employed national insurance.
And the Prime Minister, I thought, was quite honest with the fact that he thinks and he knows, he recognises people are very fed up with him and very fed up with the Conservative Party. But he claims that he is the only one with the ideas to help create that better future.
But I'm not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with our party and frustrated with me. Things have not always been easy, and we have not got everything right. But we are the only party in this election with the big ideas to make our country a better place to live.
And a few of those new ideas that's just been revealed in the Tory manifesto, which has just been published: a 25-year starting prison term for those found guilty of domestic murder, the requirement for rapists and serious sexual offenders to serve all of their sentences behind bars, banning protests outside of schools, a cap on social care costs from October 2025. Previous administrations will recognise that's exactly the kind of promise that brought down Theresa May and her manifesto when she was riding high in the polls. No promise to leave the ECHR, as some Tories were fighting for, but will include a promise to reform our asylum laws. Buried in the small print in there, a ban on phones in schools to become mandatory, 2 hours of PE a week for all pupils, crack down on poor degrees, more apprenticeships. But look, James, will this change the polls? That's what everybody's going to be asking today. Is this going to be enough? Is it bold enough to really woo people back over to the Conservatives? I'm not sure it is. He didn't appear to be hugely fired up today. I think he appeared a little bit tired as well. And we are only halfway through this campaign. Labour have already said it's a Jeremy Corbyn manifesto. That is quite a claim coming from Keir Starmer, who, let's not forget, campaigned for 2 Jeremy Corbyn manifestos. They're going very hard on that attack and going very hard on the tax line today. Rishi Sunak just a few minutes ago promised that the tax burden would come down every year of this Parliament. But really, are people going to believe this guy? The guy that repeatedly put up taxes, the guy that repeatedly promised to cut them and has cut them twice, obviously now in the past sort of year or so. But really, it hasn't moved the polls at all. We still have the highest burden in modern times. Labour say the Conservatives have raised taxes 21 times in the past. Parliament, can anybody really trust them after 14 years? And I think Rishi Sunak, with what he said earlier today, acknowledges that frustration, acknowledges that people want a change. But this is really his last roll of the dice to try and turn that around before we go to the polls on July 4th.
There's still 23 or 4 days, isn't there, until, I mean, we're not even at the 3-week mark. And I'm interested that you picked up on the energy levels. I think of that rally that Neil Kinnock famously conducted when he was accused of behaving as if he'd already won the election in, it'd be 92, wouldn't it? And of course he didn't. And he shouted, this almost felt like the opposite of that. This was curiously stuffing free, wasn't it? It was incredibly flat for what is, as you say, not only a very important event, but possibly the last roll of the dice.
Yeah, just pumping through the music through the speakers and having a lot of activists in the room doesn't really create a buzzy atmosphere for these sort of things. And it did feel that those activists were putting it on a little bit. And even the cabinet, you know, whooping and clapping in the front row, it all felt a bit fake. It all felt a bit like they're just putting on a show for us all to try and gee us all up into thinking that this might still be possible to win. But privately, so many Tories, so many former MPs and so many potential candidates that want to be re-elected are privately admitting that they think this election is already lost. Can this turn it around? Like I say, lots of new ideas in this manifesto, but really I think for you know, if you look at the polls, if you look at what people are saying, if you listen to our callers day in, day out, many of them feel that they just want a change, they just want someone different. Is this going to be enough to revive the Tory fortunes? It doesn't feel like it will be.
Before you go, what question would you have asked if he'd had the courtesy to invite you to ask one?
Well, I had a few up my sleeve, James. One of the ones that was nicked by a rival broadcaster was, why can we trust you to deliver all these promises when you've repeatedly, and the Conservatives have repeatedly done so? I also wanted to ask him about reform. They're, of course, just a couple of points behind in the polls at the moment. And I wanted to ask him if he really feels that this is enough to see off that threat from reform. There's a potential that we could see the Tories fall behind reform in the polls in the next few days and weeks. And if that happens, it really is endgame for them. So those would be two up my sleeve if I had had the chance. And yes, who knows, maybe later this week, the Labour leader and potentially will be feeling a little bit more lenient to LBC. We'll see.